Hi there, and welcome to Canceling COVID. It's real talk for real people. We're looking for real solutions. I'm Tanya Rivens, and this is again Canceling COVID. Thank you so much for joining us as we work together to build stronger families and communities in the middle of a global pandemic. We've been dealing with a big one. The big question in every home, church, and business is where do we go from here? There's so much happening, so many different rules and regulations coming out, and we just are curious. Yes, what happens next. So, with more than 3 million dying around the world from COVID, here in the US, we've had over 500,000, so at least a half a million. Since the pandemic began, the impact emotionally and financially, well, it's lasting and it's going to be around for quite some time. I think we know that. But someone who's been around, who's very helpful, that's been doing good work and continues to do great work is Congresswoman Alma Adams. She represents the North Carolina 12th District. And I must say, I'm honored, I'm humbled to bring Congresswoman on to help us talk about this. Congresswoman, I just admire you. I salute you. I appreciate all you do. And I try to share that with you simply because you are one of the few that we are not always accustomed to, that's always there for us in the community when we reach out and need information. And so I'm very grateful for that. But I want to welcome you to the show. As my phone is going off, I tried to turn it off. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for always keeping the community up to date. And thank you for always reaching out to me. I'm always going to be available to provide information. If I have it, you need it. I tell folks, if you want something, ask for it. If you see something, say something. So I think we do have a lot to talk about. But thank you so much for all that you do, for the service that you provide to this community.
And thank you to your staff as well, Sam and everyone, Penelope and Kim. They're just great, great. So, you and so many of our lawmakers, they're leading the charge for rescue, relief, and recovery. And of course, President Biden, he says a big component of saving life and livelihoods is American Rescue Plan. I just want to jump right in and talk about why you are in favor of this plan.
Well, first of all, we've been in this pandemic now for over a year. We're in the 13th month, 14th month, and no one ever expected that. Well, first of all, we didn't expect the pandemic.
Right.
But when it came last March, when, it was kind of full force and things were closing up, we just couldn't imagine that it was going to be. And so people have been out of work. I thought it was certainly important for us to pass this rescue plan. I was happy that the president was encouraging us to do it. I was proud to vote for it because the people couldn't wait any longer for relief. Our community, not only here in Mecklenburg, but across this country, needed relief, and we couldn't wait any longer. People were suffering. And so, I was just happy to support it so we could put vaccines in arms, money in people's pockets, and get our kids back safely in school and put people back in jobs. We've lost a lot of jobs. It's a transformative package. It's going to protect families from COVID. It's going to protect our workforce from the economic effects of the pandemic. It's going to provide checks to American people, put money in their pockets. Hopefully, the folks out there have received theirs, and it will make sure that we can get our students safely back in school. So one of the things that we know is that this plan will cut the child poverty in half. And so it was about rescuing people, rescuing our communities. And if we can lift people out of poverty, and the numbers we have are something like 12 million people, I think this was the thing to do.
Congresswoman, you have a pretty good pulse on what's happening in the community. You're a people person, which we miss out a lot of times when we have lawmakers. And you're right there. Reach out and touch. You don't just say that. You're about it. So when it comes to your state in North Carolina directly, what are some of the impacts of the American Rescue Plan?
Well, let me just say that every state benefits. Because in terms of North Carolina, and of course you mentioned all of the lives that have been lost here, all of the people who have gotten sick, many of them look like me and you. Mm-hmm. For North Carolina, this act includes funding for our local municipalities. That's important. The state government would receive an estimated $5.2 billion in federal funds in total. Our state's going to get 8.9 billion, including 1.3 billion for child care. That's really critical now.
Mhm.
25 million for Head Start. 3.5 billion for K-12 education, and another billion, 1.14 billion for higher education. Our schools here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, will receive an estimated 346 million. Mecklenburg County is going to get 215 million, and the cities and towns in our county, which are what, about six of them. Charlotte's going to get 149 million. Cornelius 8.8, so that's like 9 million. Davidson 3.8, so that's like 4 million. Huntersville 17 million. Matthews 9.7, so that's like 10 million. Mint Hill 8 million, and Pineville 2.6 million. So everybody's going to benefit in this way. So, I'm just excited about it. This is relief that our community really did need. So North Carolina, particularly in our area, that's what we're going to see coming in.
So there are critics of the plan, believe it or not. And, what are some of the things that they really are criticizing, I guess, besides the price tag?
Well, it's interesting that when we're talking about helping working people, when we're talking about helping lift people out of poverty, then we have a problem with the price tag. But
Mhm.
if you think back at this big tax cut break, that only the rich folks at the very, very top benefited from, there was no discussion about it. As a matter of fact, there was not even an outreach to folks on the other side of the aisle, so that it could be possibly a bipartisan approach to it. We did reach out. We certainly wanted, our president is very much into making sure that we work together and to have bipartisan involvement. And certainly we made an attempt to do it. But what's really interesting, Tanya, is that we got no support for this plan, no vote, no Republican vote at all. But yet I'm hearing that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are all out in their communities letting people know what they're going to benefit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hypocritical, but nevertheless, everybody is suffering. It is not a partisan issue. When you talk about poverty, when you talk about pain, all of those things, education, childcare, it's not a partisan. These are not partisan issues, and it shouldn't have been that this bill was passed basically with Democrat support.
I would say amen to that. Now, a critical part of this is getting people vaccinated. Let's talk about this a little bit because, in our community, there's a lot of hesitancy and people love to talk about what happened in the past. And I think that there's some distrust there. We know there's a foundation and it's legitimate, but there has been a lot of work of trying to get our community vaccinated. Kind of share your thoughts on where we are with that. I know you publicly got the vaccine.
I did.
So we've got some leaders that are starting to do that, but kind of speak on that a little bit as we show you getting the vaccine, rocking that hat as always. I just
Well,
love that. But
well, thank you. Yeah, hopefully I'll get to do my hat thing this year. Don't
oh
know, because it
yes,
depends on what's going to go on with COVID. But let me just tell you, first of all, you're right. There's been a lot of distrust, and of course, much of that's based on past history. But I am just happy that we had such dedicated scientists involved in this, many who looked like me,
uh-huh.
African American women who were very involved with this. And so, because this was such a tremendous crisis, and people saw, when you talk about 500,000 people dying at the rate that this virus was killing folks, clearly we were in crisis. And so I think the scientists, knowing that, believing that, seeing that, really worked hard to work fast.
Yeah.
to get, because vaccines are not developed as quickly as this one was.
Right.
And so, I think it's going to take all of us to really try to convince people. That I just tell them, listen, this is a shot for life, for you, to save your life and to save the lives of your family and our community. And so, if only one of us gets the shot, and not, then that means that we're all still in jeopardy. So I think that this rescue plan has a national vaccination program included. We didn't have that last year, and so it's going to actually combat this virus, including scaling up the testing, the tracing, addressing these shortages in terms of the PPE equipment and other critical supplies. It also provides funding there to invest in high quality treatments and healthcare disparities, which we know are very evident in terms of Black and brown communities. Our Black Americans suffer the most. We've had over 1 in 500 Black Americans to die from this virus. And I just say, listen, this is a shot to live. This is your shot for life. And so that means that when you look at the numbers, and just, we all, I miss physically going to church, but it works out that we're talking about a couple of people in every church congregation in America.
Right.
That's how these deaths are measuring up. But so we are one of the groups that need to take the shot most seriously. And so I'm actually in and out in the community, making sure that people, at least trying to convince people to take their free shot. We're doing it on Twitter and other kinds of in other venues as well. I took both my shots. It's safe. I'm doing great. Didn't have any problems with it. But the thing I remind people of too is, think about it. Before you could get into school, you had to bring your little card to show that you've been vaccinated.
Right.
So vaccinations are not new. If you travel abroad, I've had the opportunity to travel to 14 countries as a Kellogg Fellow. I had to get all kinds of shots in order to go. But I just think, there was this previous scare and people. But I think, you should be afraid of what would happen if you don't get it.
So, the Congresswoman, I actually received a call from one of the faith leaders, and they're kind of concerned about the mixed messages that some even our faith leaders are sending to the community. Has there been any
Mhm.
contact or consideration of kind of bringing some of the leaders, even here in the city, together to kind of say how, we respect that you feel this way, but please try not to impede what we are trying to accomplish as a whole. And that seems to be some of the confusion that I'm getting, because we've got some prominent leaders that are saying, no, we're not doing this. And then we've got other faith leaders. I even have some on the air right now doing a campaign endorsing the vaccine. So, I think that just kind of creates more confusion when we are the ones that have been leading it in the deaths up to date.
Well, listen, congregations, when you talk about the faith community, this is where the largest number of people gather on a weekly basis if things were normal now and we were not in this COVID situation. So we know that this virus tends to fester and spread among large groups,
Right.
congregations. I would think that we're all missing out on having that fellowship, going to church.
Hmm.
I would hope that, and I think that a lot of the ministers are missing out too. They're to having to interact with your congregation on through a computer is not the best way to do it.
Right.
But I do think it's about educating people, and so sometimes we have to educate those who we think, those who have the largest audiences, and I would say that ministers do. I think they have to know how important the shot is. That it's not just for them for one person in your congregation, but it's for your whole group.
Right.
And that we are the most vulnerable. And so I would hope that particularly our ministers of color are really looking at this thing very seriously, looking at the numbers of people who have gotten sick, the numbers of people who have died. And so and they have a lot of influence
Yeah.
to encourage their congregations to take the shot, so that we can all then come back to some normalcy in terms of our living and gathering. So I know what you're talking about because I've heard some of them speaking, but I do think it's important for us to really get out and educate them as well. But I think the more they see, because they're leaders,
Yeah. Yeah.
and people follow
They sure
leaders,
do.
but leaders also should be educated enough to know where you're going to lead people.
So let's talk about this money. Everybody trying. I mean, and I don't even want to talk about the whole issue with
Did you
unemployment.
get your check?
Yeah, did I get a check? Hopefully it's on the way.
It's
You
in the
know,
mail.
okay, that's good news. I have to tell my honey we got some money coming. But getting this money directly to people, what are your thoughts on another stimulus? You know, once I get the first one, is there going to be something I heard about maybe monthly, potentially continuously giving people some money?
Well, let me tell you, I think we have to do that. I think people have to know that there's some sustainability for them, because the point is, we say that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I believe that there is, and we can see it, but we're still in the tunnel.
Yeah.
And I think people have to realize that and take that very seriously, and not be taking off these masks and doing all these other crazy things that people are doing.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I voted for the plan is because it does finish the job on the president's promise to provide that $2,000 in direct assistance, because that's what the 1,400 plus the six down payment that we had in December. And so they are talked about a lot in terms of assistance. I think it's important to remember that unemployment is still there. People are still facing hardships, and they'll be eligible for a lot more than $2,000 they're going to need. So the plan also provides direct housing assistance, nutrition assistance for almost 40 million people. It's going to expand access to safe and reliable health, child care, and affordable health care. It's going to extend unemployment. So those are some of the things that I think we can look at that will help sort of balance some of this out. We know that unemployment insurance on this plan will be extended for 18 million workers who can pay their bills and support, and it will support children, about 27 million, with the expanded child tax credit. And so that's really important to a lot of people, because a lot of people have been staying home because they can't afford the daycare. A
Yeah.
lot of daycares have closed down and so forth.
Mhm.
So you're talking about more than 17 million low wage workers that will also benefit through the earned income tax credit. So that's new, and that's in here. So to answer your question, I do believe that we're going to need some recurring checks. I think many members of Congress, we've talked about that. And I think we're going to have to do it. But I also think that we got to make sure that we are continuing other critical relief too. For example, the unemployment insurance, SNAP, mortgage and rental assistance, which are part of this as well, for our hardest hit families. And so that's what I would want in an additional COVID-19 relief bill as well. So, yeah, there's got to be more relief coming. As you know, I think some of the deadlines on some of these funds go all the way through September. So we have some time as well. But I think we're going to have to, that there's got to be some monthly money for folks, so that people know that they don't have to worry about, okay, I can get these bills paid. I won't get kicked out of my property, and things like that. I can feed my children.
Yeah.
Look at how many people are going to food banks instead
Yeah.
of going to the supermarket because they can't afford it anymore.
Which is
Yeah.
so sobering. Who would have ever thought here in
Mm.
Mecklenburg County in the U.S. I have a free pantry and out in the Cornelius area, and thinking that I would only have to fill it maybe once a week, and it's probably
Yeah.
every other day right now. And
Mhm.
it's great too to have one of our lawmakers join us. We're going straight to the source, which is what I appreciate, versus getting misinformation, which is often the case in the community. Now, this American Rescue Plan, some of the hardest hit have been small businesses, and we are talking about what's in the CARES Act. Let's talk about, especially for minority entrepreneurs, what type of help is in there for them?
Well, let me just tell you, I've always said that small businesses are too small to fail.
Mm.
They are the backbone that undergirds our economy. And so and the president knows that and believes that as well. And so the plan will provide support for the hardest hit small businesses, especially those owned by entrepreneurs from racial and ethnic backgrounds that have experienced systemic discrimination with the IDL grants, with the expanded PPP eligibility, and others. It's also going to provide resources to protect the jobs of first responders, the frontline public health workers, our teachers, our transit workers, and other essential workers that we depend on, that allow us to stay home and work from home. And
Mhm.
so we want the assistance to be more accessible to minority and women-owned businesses. And this rescue plan does that. Now, I also think it's good to talk about how I've personally worked to make our businesses and workplaces safer. COVID-19 has fundamentally changed the workplace, the American workplace, and the Workforce Protection Subcommittee, which I chair,
Mhm.
is at the center of a lot of these changes. As a matter of fact, on next week, we're going to be hearing bills on the floor that have actually come through the committee. Equal pay,
Yeah.
even before the pandemic. I, as a member of the Ed and Labor Committee, working with Chairman Scott, we've worked to ensure that workers have a renewed, that employers are a little more responsible, for keeping their employees safe and healthy. OSHA comes under my committee as well. But there are many intersections here that I'm concerned about personally. I'm a former educator, as you know. My daughter is an elementary school principal, and so I want to make sure that our classrooms are as safe as possible for both our students, our educators, and everybody who interacts with those kids. I also serve as vice chair of the Ag Committee. We know, as I mentioned before, in terms of food, that this pandemic has impacted workers' health
Mhm.
and their safety, as well as the food supply chain. So, meat packing and processing plants have been ground zero for COVID-19 outbreaks over the past year. And so, we've worked to improve OSHA's response to COVID-19 during the Trump administration. OSHA was essentially on the sidelines and they didn't do much. And so, our workers and employees know that we've got to do better. And indeed, we do. Everybody's been impacted, and we're hoping at this point that things will be improved. Now, I consider myself a small business person too.
Uh-huh.
I have a gallery that we started. Now it's now 30 years old in Greensboro, and we're moving along. But everybody has been impacted, particularly I'm so concerned about our small minority businesses because we don't have the luxury of having some of the benefits that some of these other folks have. And one of the things that we found out in the committee that I sit on, financial services, as we've looked at this issue, is that when we first launched that PPP program, our small businesses, a lot of our minority businesses, really didn't get their fair share. And so
Right.
we modified the standards and so forth, and we're monitoring that. And then we got some good people in place now
Yeah.
that really want to do the right thing for the right reason.
And I set up when you said equal pay. Thank you so much for that. And
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
exactly yeah, and you're exactly right around the PPP. And hats off to you guys again because I did get a note from my small business. Now you're even going a little bit further. These good people and saying, "Hey, we are targeting areas now." if
Right.
you're in one of these areas that have been hit and it's a low income or challenged community. I'm not sure why though. My business is in Smithville, and when I put in for it, it said it didn't qualify. So I don't know if it put me with the Cornelius side or not. But just the fact
Well,
that I received it.
well, reach out to us, and we'll check that out for you, because
Okay.
they may not be giving you the right information.
Okay, we'll check on that. I appreciate it. That's why I love you. You always right there answering questions. And so I want to touch on Black farmers. I could talk to you for an hour. I know
Uh,
you don't have the time. We're running out of time, but because I want to be respectful. But just touch on the help for Black farmers, which I must say I was clutching my pearls at the response that people were giving after these poor guys have suffered and waited for so long, even though they won a court case.
you're exactly right, and we just had in the Ag Committee a we just had a hearing with our Black farmers.
Mm.
And we want to get it from the horse's mouth, but our Black farmers in the U.S. have dropped from nearly 1 million to fewer than 50,000, or
Oh.
only about 1% of our farmers. The
Whew.
Black farmers now own just a mere 0.5% of all of the farmland in the U.S. So
Wow.
clearly, it's a real problem. So when you go back to the beginning of the 20th century, our Black farmers lost 90% of their land due to discrimination, structural racism, particularly with USDA and within our tax codes. So we are looking at that. We're scrutinizing that. Unfortunately, the most recent statistics from USDA makes it very clear that these Black producers were not served by the last administration's COVID relief program. They got X'd out completely. And so this rescue plan includes necessary debt forgiveness for farmers of color who've been
Mhm.
among those hardest hit by the economic crisis. And that, let me just say that piece was modeled after a portion of Senator Cory Booker and my Justice for Black Farmers Act. So
Uh,
he had it in the Senate and I had it in the House. But it's going to provide, this plan will provide tailored legislation. I mean, we're actually focusing on to address these well-documented racial discrimination cases against farmers of color, and it will ensure that they'll get the relief necessary to weather the impacts of the pandemic. We are going to in the committee that I'm vice chair of Ag. We had a hearing, as I said, the first one
uh-huh.
on Black farmers, and so we're trying to educate our total committee so that they understand that the discrimination clearly has been there. And some people were a little critical and says, "Well, why are you leaving out?" We're not leaving out other people. We're
Right.
just trying to focus on the inequities that we know already exist, and we're trying to correct that.
And I appreciate it. My producer's giving me a wrap, but I can't let you go without talking about something I know is a passion for you, and that's women's health. You've worked so hard. You mentioned it earlier. So just if you want to talk about kind of the work around it, because we know I want to do a story on here about all the women that have left the workplace and trying to see how they can get back. But I know you've worked really it's kind of trifecta, essential workers, that's who we are, the gender-based
Mhm.
violence, you're in the home, and then, of course, women of color more vulnerable to COVID-19. And I know you even work with the whole maternal health issues around
Right.
women of color. So kind of
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit.
Well, that statistic was shocking. We've got 70,000 pregnant women
Mm.
who contracted COVID-19 so far, and over half of them are women of color. We always tend to get the brunt of everything. Next week is Black Maternal Health Week.
Mm.
And I'll be talking about my omnibus legislation, which we introduced last March. It's really just a series of bills that will invest in federal programs to address these risks and the effects of COVID-19 during and after pregnancy. I have some personal interest in that, as my daughter had some serious issues 15 years ago. Actually, my
Mm.
granddaughter just turned 15,
Oh.
and we were about to lose them both. But so another thing in terms of this COVID-19 is that we're promoting maternal vaccinations that will protect the health and safety of moms and babies. So there, we've got now, instead of 9 bills that we started with, we have 12. Last year, when you look at this report that came out, 1 in 3 jobs held by women has been designated as essential. So this pandemic has clearly left women in I think in a terrible state because they've lost the most jobs, staying home with the children, not having the daycare and all those things. Women of color, of course, are hit even harder. Asian women, Latinas have reported high rates of lost employment income in their households. So that's before the pandemic, and now
Right.
with this current crisis, women are still struggling. So we're the ones who go out and vote. We represent 64% of the workforce in some of the lowest paying jobs. And so that's why we've got to continue to address these issues, not just during the pandemic, but permanently. So I'm a supporter of raising this wage act, the Paycheck Fairness Act as well, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, all of these things that impact women in a very negative way. We want to fix. Gender-based violence.
Yeah.
The American Rescue Plan recognizes the importance of supporting those victims as well. There's a lot of money in the plan for different programs, including the Family Violence Prevention Services Act, 180 million there, another almost 200 million for sexual assault, another 50 million for culturally specific programs, and 18 million for tribal specific responses to gender-based violence. It is a problem, and we're going to continue to work on it.
So, Congresswoman, I got to wrap because I want to be respectful of your time. So, if you could tell me just real short how this bill, the American Rescue Plan, speaks to HBCUs, because I want your staff to let you
Well,
come back again.
right, HBCUs. I'm HBCU
Yeah.
strong, and we're getting ready to do some things in terms of infrastructure too. But historically, our schools don't have large endowments like other institutions.
Right.
Our students, first generation for the most part, and so that's one of the reasons that we sponsored the Future Act. It passed into law in 2019. That was important. It's certainly going to help our schools in a permanent way. We don't have to go back every year. But I have made sure that relief for HBCUs are included in every stimulus package that we do. This American Jobs Plan includes tens of billions of dollars to invest in research and development at HBCUs and MSIs, and that's a critical part of dealing with the issue around equity and that equation for HBCUs that's been missing for a long, long time. So all I can tell you at this point is it's not going to end here. I'm going to continue to work to make sure that we have a bright future for HBCUs, because I know what an HBCU can do for students. Like I was first generation, walking the ghetto streets of Newark, New Jersey. I'm now able to walk the halls of Congress. And so I pledge that I want to give back in that way for all that HBCUs have given to me and given me 40 years.
So I'm not sure if looks like we have frozen here. So the Honorable Congresswoman Alma Adams, of course, I was going to give her an opportunity for some last words, but we will certainly continue to stay in touch with her. But you gotta love her. I love, love, love. There we go. I think you froze for a minute.
All
That's
right,
definitely our
okay.
cue to let you go. But any last words, of course, everyone, the Honorable Congresswoman Alma Adams, as we wrap things up so that you can get back to all your busy work that is so essential, that benefits so many of us. I wish we had more of you or more like you in Congress for sure.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you again to the community for your support. Please get your shot. It's a shot for life. You need to do it. You need to do it for yourself. You need to do it for everyone else. When one of us succeeds, then all of us can do that. So thank you so much, Tanya. I appreciate it.
I
Get
appreciate
your shot, folks. Listen,
absolutely.
we're going to continue to work hard.
And together, folks, we're going to cancel COVID. It's because of lawmakers like Congresswoman Alma Adams, and for you listening. And we're having these real conversations, just real talk on this platform, an alternative to others, but certainly something that we focus on is getting you the information that you need. I just love the fact that she doesn't have a problem talking to whoever reaches out. So make sure you tune in on Wednesday as we continue with canceling COVID. You can join me this Sunday, Sounds of Inspiration at 7 a.m. for inspiration and information. Have a great weekend, folks. And again, it's Canceling COVID with Tanya Rivens. Be safe.